Record it. Yes. You're trying to drum up business. Right. That quietened everything down, didn't it? Righty-ho. Good evening and welcome to East Devon District Council's Overview Committee on the 12th of October 2023. I am your chair, Councillor Anne Hall. The meeting is being recorded and is live on the Council's YouTube channel. Now follows a health and safety announcement. There is no fire alarm drill anticipated this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the green running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it is safe to return. Please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. Ideal timing there. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. When you hear your name, please unmute your microphone and confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone again. I'll hand over to Sarah to do the roll call of the committee members. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with yourself, Chair. Councillor Anne Hall.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Bailey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny Brown.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Dumper.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Fernley.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Levine.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Olive.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Vidal.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilson, please.
Present.
Thank you. And I can confirm that we're quorate, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Agenda item number 1 is apologies, which we have a few. Shall I hand over to you, Sarah?
Thank you. Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Heath, Councillor Jones and Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you. Item on number 2 on the agenda, to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 20th of July 2023, which are on pages 3 to 6. Does any councillor have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 20th of July 2023? No comments? Thank you, and the minutes are agreed. Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest. I'll say must be all. Actually, yes, go on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Not a declaration as such, but just to say I'm the Assistant Portfolio Holder for Coast, Country and Environment, and obviously items 7, 8 and one of the 2 items falling under item 10 on the agenda fall within that portfolio. I'm not predetermined in any way. I haven't been involved with the development of any of those documents or proposals, just to declare.
Thank you very much. I will read out the rest of this bit. The mindful of the Code of Conduct, do any members of the committee have any declarations? Please state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to. State what exactly the interest in specific type of interest you are declaring. Are there any other councillors outside of the meeting committee? I think we have 1, 2. Councillor Blakey, first, please.
Yes, this relates to item 8 on the agenda. I want to declare an effects NRI because I am ward member for Cranbrook and also a Cranbrook Town Council member.
Thank you. Rightly noted, thank you. And Councillor Bloxham?
Yeah, exactly the same. Agenda item 8 affects NRI as a ward member for Cranbrook and Town Councillor for Cranbrook.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Jenny.
Hello. Do I have to declare an interest as I'm a town councillor and that is affected by the street scene public bin review because they've got costings going to the parish and town councils?
I think it's probably sensible to go with an effects NRI as well. You're not making any decisions here at this meeting. It's about approving the policy to go forward to Cabinet. So sensible too, but yeah, I think that's probably the sensible approach.
I think we've got Councillor Fernley.
Well, I'm the Broadcliffe Parish Councillor. I'm not quite sure how that all relates to the costings, but I'd better declare it.
Thank you. And Councillor Dumper.
Yes, I'm Exmouth Town Council, and several of us are, I think.
Myself.
And Dan Wilson,
I'm town councillor.
councillor.
Likewise, Chair.
I think most people. And
yeah,
Melanie.
Parish Council.
All of the above.
Yes. I think we've got everyone there. Yes.
I need to think of one. I haven't got one.
Nor have I, so don't worry, Judy. You're with me. Moving on to item number 4 on the agenda, public speaking. I believe there are no members of the public who've registered to speak. Are there any members? No. Public members? No. So we will move on to agenda item number 5, matters of urgency. There are none. Agenda item 6, confidential and exempt items. There are none. Moving on to agenda item 7, car parking strategy, draft principles and objectives on page 7 to 10 of the agenda. I will hand over to Richard Easthorpe, Parking Services Manager, to present the report and answer any questions. Over to you, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the draft car parking strategy is very much a draft document which sets out some guiding principles and draft objectives that we can use to sort of guide the running of our car parking service. I put in some sort of prospective dates of 2024 to 2031, so quite a long period, probably a bit longer than you may ordinarily see. But with the car parks, I guess they don't change as often as some things do over time. So these are very much up for debate, but hopefully they cover off the range of services and a lot of the operational management of our car parks and how we can sort of potentially seek sort of commercial opportunities and to help meet our net zero by 2040 targets through our car parking land. So yeah, like I say, none of them are set in stone at this point. It's very much sort of a set of draft objectives that are carefully worded in some places to make sure that they we don't overcommit, you know, with like the EV transition as a good example of that we play our part rather than look to convert all of our car parks into charging hubs. So yeah, it's carefully worded, but hopefully it's quite self-explanatory.
Thank you, Richard. I think before we move on to discussions from outside the committee, just a note that we're actually discussing a draft policy for the parking strategy. It's principles and objectives. It's not going into in-depth of specifics. So have we got questions from outside the committee first? Councillor Hookway?
Oh, thank you, Chair. No questions as such. Well, one I suppose, but I just wanted to say how pleased I am with this strategy for a number of reasons. I'd just like to discuss those, if I may. First of all, Section 3, the section to embrace new technology. I am very keen. I mean, we have Littleham ward members here in abundance, and car parks in Littleham are often used, and we also have the situation on the seafront. And I'm there are always times when people park without paying, and it's maybe done at night time. So I'm very pleased to see that officers are thinking about, and the strategy recommends that we move to thinking about new technologies. I'm thinking about these particular ANPR systems that are now starting to appear, and I hope that officers feel confident that we are going to support a move to there, because that will allow people to be charged 24/7, so they won't be able to stop and just not park and park and not pay. I also hope that in the long term we're able to come to a situation where perhaps the entire seafront is covered by an ANPR system, and we have a joint arrangement with the county council so that we can have a system that completely covers the whole area, one charge, one fair payment. I don't know about you, I have had people say to me that they think it's a bit odd that there's two different charges on Exmouth Seafront. If we could have a consistent charging policy, I think that would be really, really a good idea. And it's a long-term thing, and clearly we need to talk to the county council, but I'm all in favour of this. I don't know whether you've been to other places in the district, in the area, but ANPR systems are appearing everywhere now, and not just in private areas, but they are very, very effective. So I do really wish to encourage that. And the other other section I'm very pleased to see is section 4 about encouraging tourism and the long-term economic stability of towns. That's something that's very close to my heart. So I absolutely support it. I thank Richard for starting this discussion, and I look forward to seeing it going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Interesting comments. I do know that the difference certainly for on-road parking, it's not taxed, whereas our EDDC car parks are taxed, VAT. Yeah, so that is an issue. So whether that's a government policy which we could react to if it comes down, but I'd say something which is out of our control, unfortunately. I think we've got Councillor Brown.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, sorry.
It's all right, there you are.
Thank you.
I don't know if this comes under this subject or not, but with electric cars, if people park and charge their electric car, are you charging them for parking and for the electricity, or are you letting them have free parking?
I believe it's...
There's no notices displayed in any of the car parks with regard to that. And if you go into Dorset, they charge you both for parking and for charging. So what is East Devon doing? It's not been publicised.
Yes, so it is publicised on the website, and we are awaiting some more information to go into our car parks as well, onto the actual machine. So for this year, the decision was taken to not charge for charging as well, so not double charging. So we get a revenue share from the income of the charging sessions, which ordinarily, with the rates of electricity being quite high, will cover the use of that space for that time. And also, I think the double charging may be a bit of a deterrent for motorists. And you're right, there isn't that much consistency in relation to that, even across Devon. I know there's some of our neighbouring authorities do charge to pay to park in the car park and to charge your vehicle as well. So that's something that can be reviewed in the future. But at the moment, for this year, it's advertised quite well on our website that we're not charging for electric vehicle charging this year, and there will be stickers soon to go on the charging units themselves to advise people that that's the case.
Thank you, Richard, for that answer. I think moving on to members, I think Bailey and then Councillor Levine.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've read the report with interest. However, parking is not a one-size-fits-all solution. An example is in Exmouth, Devon County in their wisdom have decided to put in permit parking in various areas of Exmouth, which, because of the...
I think we're looking at EDDC's policies at the moment.
But this is very relevant,
Okay,
right? Devon County have decided to put in these permits but there's not enough spaces for the permits that have been sold. So consequently, people are going into the car park in Imperial Road, for example, for all the colony, and you can't get in there for love nor money. Now, if, as someone suggested a while ago, that parking was made 24/7, this will be a horrendous expense for the people living in that area. Through no fault of their own, there's been too many tickets sold, not enough spaces. Therefore, if that area was to be charged 24/7, it would just be beyond the cost of most people. So I think that's got to be taken into account. And it's a serious problem which we get, as you may know yourself, being an Exmouth person, we get mentioned to us nearly every day of the week. So that would be my contribution at the moment. Thank you.
Something to look at when they're moving on with this policy, to actually look at if they are looking at doing overnight charging in all car parks across the spectrum. They would have to look at that for specific areas, but it's to be mindful. Over to you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That is something that I am aware of, and that's sort of a new and emerging issue with Exmouth and the restrictions. I believe they come in on the 14th of August, and you're absolutely right. Estuary long stay is, we've seen a lot more visitors to Estuary long stay, with visitors and residents looking for somewhere to park. And we've done a little bit. We've managed to create, I think, 6 new spaces in the existing car park itself. But I mean, as part of this policy, I would hope that we can be flexible when we're looking at things like that, so we are able to adapt and to make sure that the car parks are best suited to their location and their usage as well. And as you say, it does change and evolve over time.
May I come back just for a moment? Thank you. I appreciate what you're saying. The thought is that the Imperial car park specifically has a large coach parking area, which is only used for approximately 2 to 3 months of the year. Now, could we not free up that at the other 9 months of the year, so that would be available for local people after 6 o'clock at night, so when they come home from work they've got somewhere to park their car? Because at the moment it's getting worse, not better. So that is a possible solution I'm just trying to put to you, if I may. Thank you, Chair.
Say it will be noted, I'm sure, and we will, in the moving forward, it will be taken into account. Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Good point there. Councillor Levine, and then Councillor Wellman.
Thank you, Chair. This question actually ties up with what Councillor Bailey just asked. I live in a rural area, and we have no local no transport to speak of. If I want to come to Honiton, for example, from where I live, I have to book 3 days B&B if I try to use the bus service. The people who live in my part of the world come to Honiton by car. They have no other choice. And I'm sure that other rural people come into an urban area by car because they haven't got a choice. And they are hit by parking charges. And in the summer, they've got to pay the excess. So I was wondering, is there any way of taking into account the fact that some people have to use cars? Because if we're going to make life difficult for the rural population, you're going to discourage them from coming into the town centres. For example, in Honiton, you're going to kill the town centre. They're going to go to Tesco and to Aldi or somewhere where there is free car park. And there's no way of getting by foot from, in Honiton at least, from the shopping, from the supermarket to the town centre without killing yourself, because there are no pedestrian crossings across Exeter Road and the main roads. So I was wondering, is there any way of making allowances or exemptions for people who live way outside Honiton, and or for that matter, Seaton and Sidmouth, rural Sidmouth, for example, who have to come into the towns simply because they have to. They're not tourists.
Can I come on that one first? I think we need to look at our parking permits for residents, which are actually very good values across the East Devon. And that would actually be, I think, one of the best ways for rural people to deal with parking, because they are good value and you only have to buy them, you can buy them just monthly. and it allows you to park in quite a few places, and it's a lot better. It's a discounted way. I would say the actual parking charges, I think across the board for the winter, am I right, for locals is it £2, or is that, it is across the board £2 for the whole day, which is really good. It's a lot better than a lot of places, counties. So I understand the rural bit, but there are ways, and I think we ought to be shouting that message out about our parking permits for our residents.
But may I come back? Thank you, Chair, of course. But the thing is, the population don't know it.
So it's getting that message out there. Yes,
Yes.
I totally agree. Councillor Melanie Wellman, and then Tim Dumper, Todd Olive, and Paula Fernley. Melanie.
Thank you. First of all, I think this is a great strategy, and it goes into detail in really important areas. I don't know how much detail you want us to go into today, but I certainly have got quite a few things to say about this. It's a hot topic in our ward, parking. First of all, I think we need to be perceived to be offering value for money, first of all. If we are looking at charges, we've also got to be looking, balancing that up with what we're spending in our wards as well. For instance, EDDC don't want to paint our public toilets at the moment, and our constituents have got a lot to say about that. So on one hand, we're taking the money for the parking, but then we're not spending it in our area. So I think we just have to be really, really mindful of that. So secondly, I'd like to see a difference in car parking charges or some subsidies for locals versus tourists in our area. I think if the car parking charges are too high, it drives people onto our residential streets that where there's free parking next to our major car parks. Now, of course, tourists don't know necessarily where those are, but they will find them if they perceive that the car parking charges are too high. So that's another point. But yeah, definitely, I would like to see something in my area where there is some sort of subsidy for locals versus tourists.
Which I would say for a good section of the year there is, and there's also the parking permits.
But the parking permits don't suit everybody. So I think, again, I don't know how much detail we need to go into this, but I'd like to thrash this out a bit further in a bit more detail as we go through this. And going back to the point made earlier about charges at different times of the day. I mean, there's less demand for parking at night. So, again, this perception that we're offering value for money, why not have non-existent or lower charges at night than in the day? It shouldn't be elevated car parking charges during the day. At night, beg your pardon.
Yeah, I think, Richard, I think they are cheaper at night. There's a...
Yes, Chair. So our long stay car parks are chargeable 24 hours a day, but that is where the permit holders, they can use those. But our short stay car parks, the tariffs end at 6 o'clock. And I think part of what this is getting at is actually looking at, we've got a lot of management information now that we can see exactly when the car parks are being used, and I think that's exactly the sort of thing we should be looking at, maximising that usage and making sure that there is that nice spread of people using the car parks in the towns and the other places throughout the day. So yeah, absolutely.
It's the principles and strategy moving forward, so which will be, I think this is going to be looking at 2024 rollout, isn't it? So yes, yeah. Thank you, Melanie. Councillor Dumper.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, first thing then, following up from Melanie's point, I think it would be a good idea, and maybe Richard Easthope is expecting this, that we actually feed in separate from this meeting, because there are going to be an enormous amount of different points, both on principles and on detail as well. So is that welcome? Yeah.
Yes.
And can I say thank you as well to Richard and his team for all the work on this, because I think one of the places where you get the most valuable information from is people who actually do the job. And when they're on the ground doing the job, you've got the real ground level information, which is great. One or 2 points I'd like to make tonight. One is that you reference a 7-year strategy, and I do wonder whether things are not moving a bit quickly for 7-year strategies, and whether we need to compress it a bit, maybe. One thing I noted there already in the context section was that, in the draft principles section, expectation that the ban on the sale of, that should say, of course, new petrol and diesel vehicles in 2030. Of course, we've already been told by our Prime Minister that that's now going to be spin out. So I wouldn't expect it to be spun out. I would expect that to change some again. But having said that, that's what I'm saying. There's going to be a lot of change, and we've got to look out for that. And the other big point I'd like to make, others, Brian I think has made as well, in terms of coordination with others. And I've already been in here in one subcommittee this morning, talking about working closer with Devon County Council, car parking and car use and transport use generally, because we're trying after all to get more people on public transport, we're trying to get more people walking, cycling, etc. Then I think our transport authority we need to coordinate with closely. And I would also say, particularly in the light of all of us declaring those interests that we were town and parish councillors, I think working with the parishes is very, very important, particularly the towns as well, because there's a lot of parking facilities. It's a big issue in all the towns. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Dumper. Some valid points there. Councillor Olive?
Thank you, Chair. As one of the, I suspect, only members of this committee who doesn't have an East Devon car park in their ward, interested to hear the detail from everyone else. I just wanted to pick up actually on one of the topics that Councillor Dumper has just mentioned in terms of modal shift, and specifically this is objective 6.2 in the proposed strategy: identify available East Devon land that could be used for additional car parking, given that we know we're going to need substantial modal shift away from private vehicle transport if we're going to achieve net zero by 2050. I just wonder what the rationale of 6.2 is, please.
I think it doesn't have to be big areas of land in itself. This can be smaller parts of land sort of attached to car parks and other sort of land that could be used for that purpose, or used differently for different types of parking. I guess that was the rationale behind that. And I think that lots of the feedback suggests is that car parking is in such high demand with growing vehicle use, and that seems to be the feedback that we have from the ground. So I often get requests for multi-storey car parks in certain places, and I don't know. So that was sort of a abridged version of that.
And say that could actually possibly link with 4.3, the facilitating overnight of stopovers where appropriate, and actually facilities, because that would eat into car parking space, which I know in Exmouth we've got a lot of parking up overnight with camper vans, etc. And we haven't got the facilities there, and they are dumping their waste down our manholes and straight into a brook and things. So that's got to be looked at. So that would link in with that strategy, I would have said. But thank you for that. Councillor Fernley next.
Thank you. Well, I'm following at your point about overnight stopovers where appropriate. I think it could be a really good use of car parking and revenue, because there are lots of people these days who've got vans who do what they're told, do look after the place, and maybe want to go and have a meal in one of the district's towns but don't want to drink and drive home. So they're quite happy to stay overnight, pay a fee to be able to do that, and will take their rubbish home with them. I think the people that you're talking about, it isn't going to matter what you do. If you give them somewhere to put it, they're still not going to put it there. So I think it would be great to get regular members of society who want to do this. It will bring revenue for businesses all over the place. So I think it's a great move. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. I would say it was just that the facilities aren't there to actually get rid of their waste, but they are putting it, thinking it's going down into a... I think some of them are quite responsible, but there's no facility there for actually putting that foul waste somewhere. And they're thinking they're putting it down the sewers, and they're not. That's our specific in Mayor Road car park. But I get what you're saying, and there are two types of people around. Thank you. Councillor Riddell?
Thank you, Chair. I think that when it comes to parking, it is such a contentious issue, and not just here, but everywhere in the country. You see it online, the way that people park. I live right by a primary school, so I see it every day. Just the parking is horrific. But I'm still getting complaints now from residents about the parking charges, the way they sort of went up. And I think that they went up so suddenly, and after such a long time of them not going up, that it probably did shock some people. And I think that having a plan going forward and looking at ways to, slowly put prices up if they have to go up, that will help sort of from that point of view. I would never want to see that with these ANPR cameras, the charging a lot of the car parks being 24 hours. I think there's a lot of people like myself that will, go into Exeter for a meal and you'll park in the car park because after 6 o'clock you don't have to pay. I think that a lot of businesses would be damaged if you took that free parking after 6 away. I know that in Exeter they've started charging till 10 o'clock now in all of their car parks, and if anything it just pushes the parking out onto residential streets. But the thing I do like the idea of what you said is with the overnight stays, really harnessing that. And I think if we can have the infrastructure to make it responsible and sensible, then it could also be a good income for the council. But there's lots of people that would then be coming here and enjoying it and doing it in a sensible way. So I think that's a really good idea.
Thank you. I'd say this is a strategy document. It's not saying that prices are going to go 24/7 everywhere, blanket. It would be looked into in great detail. So it's the principle of the strategy, and actually if you've got any recommendations to add something in there or tweak something, I don't know if there's anyone wanting to have a recommendation or are they happy for it to carry on? Councillor Olive?
Thank you, Chair. By virtue of my APH position, I'm not going to propose or vote on either of these recommendations. But I just wanted to make the observation, many of the points that we're hearing regarding ensuring we're supporting local businesses, we're actively consulting when we're considering changing the tariffs, those principles are in here. On ensuring we're supporting third parties and concessions. That's 2.4 on actively consulting when we're considering amending tariffs. That's 2.2. I think others have said it best. I think in my view this captures very well the principles that we want to see reflected in a detailed strategy. I would say maybe from the level of detailed comments that are coming from committee, we possibly want the detailed strategy to come back to overview when it's written. I get that sort of feeling, and we'll leave it to somebody else to propose a recommendation on that. But generally, it seems to me as though the principles are reflective of what we'd like to see.
Thank you, Councillor Olive. Councillor Fernley?
I'm happy to propose these recommendations, but before I do, I wish everyone to remember that we are in a climate emergency. And we're talking about transport, and we all need to be thinking as individuals. We are supposed to be leading our area, and there are buses and there are trains in some areas that we can use, and it's well worth, now the pandemic is over, these things are back and working in lots of places, and they're worth having a go and trying. But I know we need a car parking strategy, and I'm happy to propose these recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Fernley. Do we have a seconder? Tim? You want to carry on?
I just wanted to make the point that when I asked just now if we were able to make further proposals, I didn't say that there were certain ones that I wouldn't encourage here, but I imagine that if we went round and looked in detail, all of us would want certain of these proposals more than others. So I think to propose them as a block now, when I'm sure Richard and his team are putting them forward as a general thing for our consideration and our reaction, and I would like to feel that we had our input, and then Richard was asked to look again and then make an amended proposal. I'm sure most of the ideas that are here are very acceptable to everybody, but I think we need our input at that level. That's my feeling.
Which, say you seconding what Councillor Fernley was, because it's the overview committee consider and agree the proposed principles and objectives that will form the basis of EDDC's car parking strategy, and that we also agree the dates of 2024 to 2031 for the time period in which the strategy will cover. Is that what you...
No, I wanted to second what Tim said.
Right, so we need...
Okay, so we'll need a recommendation then at that point, and that will be an alternate. Actually, it won't, because we didn't get a seconder.
I'm saying, did we have a seconder for Councillor Fernley's proposal?
Chair, could I just suggest, if somebody recommended Councillor Olive's suggestion of bringing a policy back, does that not pick this up? That actually what it will then come back again, rather than bringing back more policies and sort of outline. This is a first stab at it. I think is very clear to take members' views and come back again. So if this comes back to overview, as I think is intended anyway, does that help members?
Yes.
Does that proposal include the idea of us having an input separate from this meeting, and that informing the future strategy that Richard and his team come back to us with? Is that the idea?
If somebody makes it, I can't propose.
I am prepared to propose that idea. I haven't put it in motion type words, but I think Councillor Olive's proposal generally, if it is leavened with the fact that we are encouraged, and perhaps all councillors, all 60 of us, are asked to make our comments, and then that will come back.
So this is very, I'm sorry I'm speaking for Richard, but this is very much the starting point. The idea of this is your first go at it.
And it's a great starting
point. And they take it away. Richard's already said that they're happy to hear from members individually. There will be, I imagine, consultation later on when there's a more formed policy. This is stage one. So really it's for you to, what I would just encourage you is not to bog this down at this stage. This is about moving things forward. So the recommendations that are there, perhaps with something that says a future policy will come back to overview, which I imagine is the suggestion anyway, and the service is happy to take the recommendations or the content or comment of members. But somebody needs to make it.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask whether it would be a good idea to get all this covered and encompassed, maybe a subcommittee?
I think at this stage, am I right in saying it's a bit too early for a TAF?
I mean, to agree this strategy today, because this is great, but to ensure that we are heard, that we are involved in some sort of committee to discuss the finer detail.
Or would it, I don't know if it would be better for your thoughts to go to Director Richard direct, because there's going to be so many strings attached for every different award that I think feeding into Richard with your ideas would be the best way to go on that front. So you are being heard by the right person.
We won't have any discussion though, will we? It'll just be...
It will then come back to overview in early next year, I suspect, with those details involved in there or taken into consideration. And that would be when you would then deal with it.
Would we be discussing that level of detail at overview though?
Well, I would say, at the moment, I would say we're discussing what's in front of us. You're wanting to add more detail in. I would say you need to add that detail into the right officer and his team. So therefore, he then can put it into, see if it will work, and then a report comes back, or a policy document comes back to us for overview to scrutinise.
What do my colleagues think of that suggestion?
And say we have a comment, Councillor Brown, at the back.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. What's your strategy with regards to coach parking? Because I can't see anything in there with regards to coach parking.
Over to you, Richard.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. There isn't anything directly relating to coach parking within the strategy as it stands.
So that will be one thing picked up to go into the next. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Just to say that I'm aware that that's a particular interest of one of the councillors in Seaton, and what I'm hoping is he will be able to have a meeting with our portfolio holder for tourism and relevant officers to look at that whole area of coach parking and bringing coaches into the area as part of all of that, if that's any interest.
Thank you very much for that one. So, back to our recommendation. We have got a recommendation at the moment that the principles and objectives from this report, and that the dates go from 2024 to 2031, with the fact that we feed into Richard and the team who are putting the strategy or policy together. It will come back to overview for scrutinising again when that report is ready, before it goes as a policy to Cabinet, I presume, and then to full council. So we've got a proposer for that.
I think we just have. You can. Yeah,
I can propose. I'm proposing that. A seconder. Councillor Dumper. All in favour? And abstention? Yeah. Thank you very much for that good discussion on that one. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8, street scene public bin review, pages 11 to 16. This is to consider the report that is to go to Cabinet. David Snape is unfortunately ill, so we've got Andrew Hancock, who has also been working alongside the project officer, David Snape, to present the report and answer any questions. Over to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. Please do bear with me. As the Chair said, David, who's authored the report and undertaken the review firsthand, can't be with us tonight, so I'll do my best to present it and answer any questions. This originally arose from two streams of work. Cranbrook members requested through a question to Council for a review of equitable bin charging across the district, and also our own planned work to review service delivery within operations tied to the Recycling and Waste Future Contract work. The bin reviews in our current service plan for delivery this year and for phase 2 next year, so it's a two-step approach. Holistically, this is a wider review than just bin charging equity, and the phase 2 work suggested is important in improving the efficiency of our service moving forwards and ensuring it's fit for the future. As I said, this work will link to the contract and service futures work undertaken for our recycling waste contract that Cabinet approved the formation of a portfolio team on Tuesday night to start this work in earnest. Cranbrook members requested that if at all possible we deliver the first part of this report regarding bin charging in time for towns and parishes to set budgets ahead of the next financial year, which makes sense, and hence we've brought it forward to you tonight. The report presents the findings of the service charge review for litter and dog bin collections, alternative service delivery models, mapping of all the bin locations and future planning for Cranbrook, and it should mention also the new town and growth area surface delivery, which will be picked up in earnest in phase 2 of the project. So excuse me, turning to the service charges review, it's reviewed the provision and pricing structure currently in place and what we charge town and parish councils across the district. It's looked to address the charging differences between Cranbrook, who historically have paid £3.45 per empty, and other town and parish councils who pay £2.12 per empty. These historic charges have been increased annually by inflation through a portfolio holder report. We know that the charges don't currently cover our delivery costs, and service charges need to be increased into the region of £4 per bin collection to cover these costs. We've suggested in the report that we implement this price increase over 2 years, plus RPI, to mitigate the impact and give town and parishes time to prepare. We also mentioned that it's difficult to extract the exact figures for dog bin collection because it's included in part of the recycling waste domestic collection contract, and that further work will be needed as part of the Suez contract review on this. However, we do go on to ask Cabinet, and perhaps overview members can consider this tonight, whether we should apply the increase to dog bins as well as litter bins. We've got far more dog bins that we charge others for than litter bins, and as we're about to move to a cost-plus arrangement with the Suez contract, it would seem logical and reasonable to cover those costs. We've identified the need for more information to enable better scrutiny of our costs and service delivery, and one of the recommendations is to pick up a project, an outdated project, to get a piece of software in to record and govern this work. This will help us check our efficiencies, which we will need to do as part of the new Environment Act measures, and also to prepare for any future service changes. The report only lightly touches on alternative service delivery models and outlines some of the considerations there, which chiefly will be picked up in phase 2 of the project. It does also look at a consideration of combined litter and dog bin collection model, but as this will incur significant costs, we suggested that we don't take that forwards at this time. And finally, just to wrap up, it talks about the mapping of the bin locations across the district. They're all done now, and we are intending to put those onto our website so that members of the public can see where they are and more easily report. We talk about the QR codes on the bins as well, which is another thing that's currently in train, and once we deliver that, it will be easier for members of the public to report full litter bins. So just to summarise, it would be great if the committee tonight could consider the policy in the round and discuss its findings rather than the recommendations to Cabinet specifically, and discuss whether dog bin charges should be increased as well in line with the litter bin charges, and whether this increase should be staged over 2 years as we suggested, or should come forwards in 1 year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Good informative report there. I think we got a question or statement from Councillor Young.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for the report, and I welcome the report. As the charging and location of bins has grown piecemeal over the years without much overall strategy and policy. When I took over this portfolio 4 years ago, I couldn't understand how it all worked, so I asked for review, and after COVID and all the rest, we're now getting this review. To me, it seems to be such an anomaly that the most manhandled section of our bin collection are dog bins, which I would have thought would be the most best to be mechanised. But there it is. We have to manhandle dog bins all the time, and it's quite surprising how many dog bins we've actually got. But I would welcome the committee's views on the report, and then we can take it next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Any other questions or from outside? Councillor Brown first, and yes, Colin. Sorry.
I have a number. Oh, sorry, I forgot about that. I have a number of I look after 11 parishes. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. And we've got dog bins in quite a few of them and that. And they're always on to both me and Councillor Levine about their bins not being collected. If the rates are going up to £4 for a collection, does that mean they'll be collected more regularly? Rather than being missed out?
If I may, Chair. So the dog bins in the round generally are collected 3 times a week, and the frequency wouldn't change under the increase in cost. They should be collected 3 times a week unless the parish has made an alternate arrangement with us. There are some that have them only collected once a week. The issues with dog bins, well, there's quite a lot of issues with dog bins. One of the reasons we wanted to map all of the bins was so that we had a fixed understanding of where they were, because previously it's relied on driver knowledge in our Suez contracts to get to those bins. So often if drivers are sick or they have new drivers, things get missed. So the mapping will improve this. It's stage 1 of this process of improvement. When we get to the contract review work for the recycling waste contracts, holistically, we need to look at where dog bin collection best sits, because at the moment, as we outline in the report, there isn't a backup arrangement in the Suez contract. So if their driver is sick or if they have problems on the domestic collection schedule, they will pause a dog bin collection round to assist. And obviously that doesn't work for parishes, it doesn't work for us, we get all the complaints. And the same is true along the seafronts and the like. So when we get to reviewing where it best sits, I'd like to see it brought back into our operations service so that we could ensure that it runs all the time.
Yeah, because I'm always being moaned at, but it hasn't been cleared. This is when I've got a thick skin.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and say it sounds like it's going to be looked at, hopefully, and brought in to a different system. I think we've now got Councillor Blakey and then Councillor Bloxham.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start by thanking Mr Hancock for presenting the report on behalf of obviously himself and Mr Snape. Interesting that Mr Hancock referred to producing the report in time for budget setting for the parishes and indeed for this council. Just forgot to mention that actually we'd asked for it for budget setting in 2023, not 2024. This report is actually a year later than we had expected it, which is a disappointment. Can we take it that I'm going to comment only on the mixed waste bins, because there are no dog bins in Cranbrook? So I will limit my comments to what we know. If I can just go through the report, on the first page, the 4th bullet point makes the point that the anticipated population growth in Cranbrook will significantly impact on the delivery of the bin collection service, and further work is required to develop a strategic plan. Now, this is 10 years after the first occupations in Cranbrook. I think a plan should have been developed a long time ago. However, we deal with things as they are. But I think this simply reflects how this subject, this matter, has been quite badly neglected for a very long time. So going on to the recommendations, recommendation 2, which in turn relates to paragraph 17 of the report, I'll come back to that, asks that or recommends that the increase in the service charges be implemented over a 2-year period. I simply want to know the reason for that. Why? The changes should be advised to, in my view, to parish and town councils now and implemented in full for the forthcoming financial year. Not least because it's only a matter of a couple of days ago we learned that this authority is going to be in deficit of over £500,000 for the next 2 years and £4.5 million the year after. This is known to be a loss-making service, and if there's an opportunity to put this right, why are we proposing to kick the can down the road for another couple of years? It makes no sense at all to me. Moving on, with regard to the climate change impact, the comment is that a revision in the charges will result in some customers incurring higher charges with potential reputational damage. Now, how so? Those customers who have been undercharged for many years to the detriment of EDDC risk far greater reputational damage, I think, for not correcting financial mismanagement, which has been allowed to fester unchecked for a very long time. So that makes no sense to me either. So to the report points that I wanted to comment on, number 2. This relates to to the dog bin collections. As far as the charges are concerned, as I've already said, this really is irrelevant from Cranbrook's point of view. What we're really concerned with here is the waste bin emptying and waste collection charges. In point 3, the frequency of bin collections range from once a week in rural areas to 3 collections per day on the Exmouth Esplanade during the summer. I just wonder why the report doesn't tell the reader that these collections on Exmouth Esplanade, and I believe also in Sidmouth, correct me if I'm wrong, are actually done without charge to their town councils. Therefore, the entire bill is footed here. That means that the council taxpayers of Cranbrook are paying over the odds for the bin collections in their own town and contributing to the costs in Exmouth, Sidmouth and the whole of the rest of East Devon in an entirely disproportionate way. And I believe that the current cabinet, the current council has set out to make this council a fair and equitable body. This flies very much in the face of that. In point 8 under the service charges, the rate equates to £2.12 per collection and is lower than the proposed new litter bin collections, and we intend to address this rate during the sewers contract replacement. Now, I think that is under discussion now, but it would be useful, please, to be kept informed as to how that is proceeding. Now to the nub of it. Under point 11, Cranbrook Town Council is charged £5 per bin collection based on 29 bins, and this is where things get a bit sticky. It mentions located on unadopted land. Now, despite our many previous comments on this is, if it were true, it would be irrelevant, but the fact is that it is not true. All of Cranbrook's waste bins for public use sit on adopted land, and in any case, if they didn't, the fact that the land is adopted or not adopted would be completely irrelevant to this service. So I don't know why that's in there. So please ignore it because it is misleading. Further, it said that the weekly charge is realistically £3.45 for Cranbrook because Cranbrook gets 3 collections per bin per week for its 29 bins. That actually is not quite right either. Some of the bins get collected 3 times a week, mostly during the summer, particularly during the school holidays. Many of the bins actually only get emptied twice a week. So the figure of 345 isn't quite right. We can't put a figure on it because I don't think there are any stats, certainly none that we've seen, that tell us how many collections are actually made. It would be useful to know, but I believe that the actual net figure is well in excess of £4 per collection. And point 14, this is just a small point. It mentions that benchmarking has been attempted to try and get an idea of what the costs might be. I wonder why we're bothering with benchmarking. If we know what the cost of the service is, and we know how many bins have to be emptied, what difference does it make what other councils are charging? We need to cover our costs. So a benchmarking exercise, frankly, is a waste of time and money, in my view. As I've already said, under point 17, it is suggested that the increase to £4 is introduced over the next 2 years. And this doesn't make any sense. And apart from anything else, it does still leave Cranbrook in the situation of paying over the odds for the next 2 years. This is overdue, and at no time have we as Cranbrook members suggested that we want to see a massive reduction in the fee that is paid. What we want to see is a fair fee paid by everybody so that the service costs can be covered, and that therefore the fee that would be paid actually by Cranbrook would be reduced to the same as everybody else's. If that happened to be £2.12, we'd be delighted, but realistically, that's not an option for this authority. And there was just one other point that I wanted to bring up, which is not contained within your report, but a question that was put to the portfolio holder regarding how and why the bin pricing came about. And he commented that estate management companies, estate rent charge arrangements, is government policy, and that advice had come to him from officers. We would like to please see, because we can't find it, where that policy is written, because, as I say, it seems to be not there. So thank you, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Councillor Blakey. I'll first of all come back to Jeff, and I think Andrew afterwards. Thank you.
I'll try and answer a lot of them. With regards to the policy that was put in 10 years ago, possibly wrong decision, but it was before my time. We set up a new town, but we didn't have a thought-out way of collecting bins. Obviously a small matter compared with building a new town, but we should have thought about that, and we should have put something in place that would have made it equitable and simple. Regarding the why over 2 years, I feel, and the officers feel, that it would be better to do it over 2 years, but then that would be a matter for the committee to advise Cabinet. Regarding the your comment about bring back, is it bring back a more equitable scheme? And you've pointed out that it should be wholly equitable. That would be a problem for resort towns that cater for visitors, and they would be disadvantaged because they have to cater for the people visiting that will produce the revenue for the businesses and also a revenue for the car parks. So there has to be some sort of balance. I wouldn't expect Exmouth to pay for all their visitors' rubbish to be collected. regarding the where is it? Why does this report not advise the reader that the collections are made free of charge to Exmouth Town Council? In fact, most of the collections of bins are free. 29 out of the, where is it? 700 bins, 29 are charged. And then there's another 29 that are charged for Cranbrook. And then there's commercial, so most bins are free of charge. Do we want to charge for all of them? Where are his dog bins? I take your point that Cranbrook doesn't have any dog bins, and it does seem to work there that the dog waste goes into the general bins, but that does cause a problem with weight to the bins, and a few problems here and there, I believe. And yeah, 3 times a week would be an ideal period of time to pick those bins up, especially with dog waste in it. And I think I've covered most of those points. Regarding the policy, I've checked into the way that estates are now built out within this district, and the policy is that the management of open spaces is handed over to a management company, so that the residents of that estate will be responsible for the open areas. Therefore, if there's any bins required in that area, then it would be down to that management company. That policy, I understood, was a national policy, but I've now discovered, as of today, that it was a policy that was adopted by this council about 10 years ago. So more than likely that is when it then came about that Cranbrook Open Spaces was the responsibility of a management company, and therefore the waste bins were responsible of that management company. When the town council took over, quite rightly, you looked at the management charges and thought you would take them into your precept, which was, I believe, and you believe, it was the right thing to do, but that meant that, that the responsibility of bins and open spaces was your responsibility, not East Devon's. And that's how I understand how the situation has happened in this case. Hopefully, when we do plan another new town, we'll get the policy right, and hopefully we can correct what has happened over the last 10 years with Cranbrook. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Young has covered most of the points. The first one, I just wanted to ask the question, I suppose, of Councillor Blakey, why you consider the report is late. Because in the service plan, it's clear that we would deliver this part of the report this autumn in 2023. And that's what we discussed in the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at the start of this year, when Councillor Bloxham asked if we could bring it forwards for budget setting. So I don't understand how it's late, and would appreciate some clarity on that, so I can come back to you.
Yes, Councillor Blakey, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Simply because discussions that were held with portfolio holder and I think yourself, Andrew, if I remember correctly, going back over a year ago, the idea was that the report would be brought forward in time for the 2023 budget sessions. Now, the fact that it has subsequently been agreed in the plan to bring it now rather than last year. It means that I suppose technically it's not late, but it's just disappointing that it's taken so long, shall I put it that way. And if I may, Chair, may I ask a question of Councillor Young just for clarification?
Yes, you may.
Councillor Young, you said that the 2-year rollout of this would be, in discussion with your officers as well, would be better. But could you explain why it's better?
A 2-year rollout for the parish council. Obviously, no, we're talking about a small number of bins, but it's the dog bin charges, which are fairly expensive already to the parishes. And we felt that doing it in one drop this year would be detrimental to the parish and town councils, and it would be better to spread it over a 2-year period. We didn't want to spring a large increase. None of us like to add an increase at this time. Inflation is still considerably high, and we didn't want everyone to have to put their precepts up too much. So it was felt it would be better to do it over a 2-year period rather than 1-year period.
Thank you, Councillor Young. I think it's to try and soften the blow for the people, residents as well, where prices will go up. There's an argument either way, isn't there? But I think we'll move swiftly on to Councillor Bloxham.
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, thank you to Andrew Hancock and his team for bringing this report, because I think has already been covered. It has been a long time coming, but we've got it now, so thank you. Just to pick up on the point that was just being discussed about the rolling programme of 2 year, it does state in paragraph 17, this will need to be applied to all towns and parish councils from April 24. So I am a bit confused on whether it is over 2 years or whether it's going to be from April 24. If I could have some clarity on that. Also, if I can just come back on Councillor Young, and you're quite right that we do have the mixed waste in Cranbrook, and it does work very well, but we have had some weight issues of dog waste because we've got a big country park, we've got lots of dogs, and I believe some of our bins in the past have had as much as 30 kilos of dog waste, which is a hell of a lot. But in those instances, the town council has worked with your team and put in extra bins to make it easier for your people. Therefore, we increase extra costs because we have to pay for extra bins then to be collected. But I just wanted to make that point. Just a couple of other points on Para 16, it talks about labour charges are based on the lowest hourly rate to an operative and do not include on-costs for pensions, holidays and sickness pay. Does that mean the labour costs in the report don't accurately reflect the labour costs? If they were based on the highest hourly rate paid and include the on-cost, it would give an actual indication, because this could mean that the proposed charge of £4 doesn't cover the operating costs from the outset. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. Para 34 states that all new bins will be installed by Street Scene Operations, who will look to work with the town and parish councils to ensure new bins are installed in appropriate location for collections. Just wondered who would that be that will work with the town and parish councils. And Para 35 refers to the next stage of the project, considering the future strategic direction of the service in Cranbrook to address the operational issues identified during the review. The report doesn't explain what those issues are and what we can expect this next stage to commence and complete. And finally, it talks about a desired compound in Para 37, which we all know that was originally going to be available and then got taken out, and we all know it's needed. But could this not be included in the Section 106 negotiations that are currently taking place for the expansion areas, or relating to any other development in nearby Honiton, Ottery, St Mary? Thank you, Chair. You'll be pleased to know they are my only questions.
Thank you, Councillor Bloxham.
Chair, can I just jump in a minute and just ask that we remember that this is about reviewing the overall policy. We're getting a little bit into detail here, and we have got other things on the agenda, so I don't know if Andrew wants to pick up those points or pick them up separately, but we haven't actually got into the committee yet.
I would say you want to pick them up?
I
or
can quickly answer those if you
quickly?
like, Chair.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
So, taking in order, Councillor Bloxham, so April 24 is the proposed implementation of the the first year of increased charges if we take it over 2 years as recommended in the report. What we've tried to do, and sorry if there's been some misunderstanding about years, but we've tried to do this so that towns and parishes can build it into their budgets now for the new financial year from April 24. Does that make sense? In terms of the labour costs, the finding was that the current charges that we were making to Cranbrook and others hadn't taken account of labour costs above the lowest spinal point and the on costs. So the £4 in here does, and if you look at the background information, there's a link to the salaries information. So we are incorporating that into the proposed charge at £4, so it would cover that. The locations bit with towns and parishes would be our area officers. We have a network of area officers in each geography, and they could interact with the town and parish council. And 435 on the strategy, the next steps. So this is, as I mentioned earlier, the portfolio holder team that Cabinet have just agreed to set up is principally to look at the future services work for the recycling and waste contract, but because there are synergies with our operations and how it all works and gels together, we want to take them in the round, take them together and look at the model of operation for street scene ops as well. So that once that's been approved at council, we'll set up the first portfolio team, and then we'll start that work in earnest. Obviously, the contract renews in 2026, or ends in 2026 with Suez, so that's our hard deadline to have all of that work completed by.
Thank you, Andrew, for that explanation. I think we've got Marianne Rickson next, and then
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Dan Ledger.
I'd just like to say, looking at the report, it does say that dog waste is heavy, that many bins would need replacing if a combined waste system was adopted. So there are obviously quite high setup costs involved. Pilot costings suggest that to replace 768 bins could cost in the region of 730,000, but this could then enable the use of a side lift to lift the wheelie bins. But then that might need more staff and or additional vehicles. So there are obviously high setup costs involved. So I'd like to propose a more radical suggestion, which is that we get the government to reinstate the dog licence. This was abolished in 1987 in England, and if it was reintroduced at a suitable level, then this would cover the costs involved and might even cancel the need to put any £4 charge for Cranbrook.
Yes, and say there's there's so many dogs now, and a lot of people expect dog bins every few hundred yards so that they can get rid of the waste, but they don't think, oh, who's got to empty those and the cost involved. And yes, it's a high labour-intensive thing, but yes, a dog licence of a proper value would be really good. Even though I am a dog owner, and I agree with that as well. Thank you, Marianne. Over to Dan Ledger.
Thanks very much, Chair. Two very quick questions, I hope. So, with regard to the split model, I understand that obviously we can't move forward with that due to the high setup costs. Is there any way that we could, softly introduce a model like that when bins come to the end of their useful life, the ones that are easy and are in easy to locate locations? We could add in litter bins into those areas so that they're mixed use. And then everything that we're talking about now is just a cost recovery model. Shouldn't we really be looking at creating a small surplus within it, so then we can look at innovation, transformation, so that we can look at for instance, if you were to increase the bin collections to £5, that would generate about 40,000 a year, which it would bring it in line with what Cranbrook's taken, but then that would pay for most of an additional vehicle that's listed in the report of 56,000. So is that something that we can do? Is it something that we've thought about? That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Ledger. I don't know if Andrew wants to respond to that.
I'll have a stab, Chair. So the mixed-use litter bins is a tricky one with our current logistical setup. So we've only got a handful of the side lift vehicles, and they primarily service the seafronts. And as Councillor Bloxham mentioned, the mixed-use litter bins are very heavy, so we have manual handling issues, and we have to think carefully about the location too. So we would need to change our fleet to be able to do that more widely than we currently have it. And I think that comes in the sort of future services full review of how we're operating. It is something we should look at, but we need to properly cost it out. So I don't think it's something we can just sort of evolve into, unfortunately. The small surplus, so just to put this into context, the subsidy at the moment, where we're not covering costs, amounts to 16,000 a year for all the dog bins and the 29 litter bins on the outside contracts. So it's not a huge amount. Putting it up to £5 would give you a little bit more, but it's not going to pay for a lease cost for a side lift vehicle or anything like that. I think what we need to do under the future services work is really get into what other models of operation we could have, and that's where we can put the innovation and the future transformation into the service delivery. And we do need that, because we're seeing a changing environment across the piece. We've got sort of community asset transfer to deal with. We've got a changing asset base. So we need to be more flexible and agile, but it needs to be part of a planned approach.
Thank you for that response, Andrew. I think we're now moving committee members to the committee, and we've got Councillor Levine and Councillor Fernley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a new councillor and I've got a disproportionately big mouth. And my problem with the document is not so much as how much are you going to charge, but where are the bin collections? Because in my 11th, as Councillor Colin Brown said, the one complaint we keep getting from our parish councils is bins are not being collected. There are more and more dogs in the area because with COVID, the dog population has increased. But the parish councils themselves appoint people to empty the bins because nobody turns up. Now, this is not a new problem because my predecessor has been trying hard to get a solution to this and failed. And I can quite understand that it is not as cost effective to empty dog bins and litter bins in the countryside as it is in urban areas where the bins are close together. But it's the same problem that the Royal Mail is addressing. Universal postage, you have to be able to, the same letter goes to towns and goes to the countryside. So the question that I have is, what message can I take to my parish councils? Forget about litter bin, just carry on, pay more, or have you checked that you haven't paid? But they want to know, are they going to get any action from EDDC about dog bins? Would you be able to give me an answer so I can take back home?
Over to you, Andrew, on that one.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I think the shortest, simplest message is please ask your parish clerk to speak directly to us. We have a report it on the website or in our app for missed dog bins. And only today I was dealing with one. We have mapping in our Suez vehicles for the dog bin round, so we can see exactly where they have and haven't been. So it's very easy for us to give an answer to those parish clerks as to why it hasn't been emptied or has been emptied. Unfortunately, it's not always a case that it hasn't been emptied. What we're seeing increasingly is people putting their domestic dog waste into a dog bin, and so it fills it up in one foul swoop. So sometimes we can show on the plot of where the driver's been that they have emptied, but we're still getting reports of it being full. So I probably need to speak to you offline to look at the specifics rather than giving you any more of an answer today in the committee.
A discussion with Street Scene with Andrew seems appropriate. Thank you, Andrew. Moving on to Councillor Fernley, then Riddell, then Dumper, and then Brown. Is it not working?
I've gone green. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, it seems to be a very complicated subject, and I thought I knew what was going on in our parish, but I've now realised I'm confused because everyone talks about Cranbrook and Cranbrook's issues because it is big. Tytheborn isn't as big, but it's still quite big. And we apparently have got management companies that are looking after, or will have management companies, because it's still in that awkward stage of nobody's quite knows what's happening. But there are areas on adopted roads that need litter bins. Are these going to be able to add it into this contract? Yeah, I suppose that's the biggest question is, don't forget Tythebarn, it's quite large. We've still got 1,000 odd houses that are going to need to be occupied. So there are bin issues along the way. Granted, lots will be covered by management companies, but not everything. And for bin locations, again, I like the idea of the Section 106 of the extension to Cranbrook, because, you know, we are a big area, and trying to keep down our carbon and get the fleets over our way would be very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. I think that's again a council matter. You do have a town council matter with street scene to actually work out the logistics of when management of your area has been done, what is missing, and then you have a discussion. Yeah, thank you. Over to Councillor Riddell.
Thank you, Chair. I actually think the report's not too bad. I think it's quite a good report. Not too bad, quite good, whatever. That's not the right word. Sorry, I was meaning to say it was good. I think that Councillor Young actually made some quite good points, and a couple of months ago when I was at something else, we were talking about the issue of bins and the charges and stuff like that. I think that it would be, like he said, unfair for places like Exmouth that have all the tourists, the influx of tourists, to have to pay, more costs because, it's people coming in and doing it rather than that local people are filling them up, although they do fill them up. I really like the idea of the QR codes as well. Like, that's something I actually picked out, which I thought was really good, because I've had a few emails where people have said, oh, this bin's full or that bin's full, but I think if they've all got their own number and code, that people can sort of do that themselves. As for the charges on the dog poo bins, I am not on a parish council or town council myself, so I would be interested to hear what other people sort of have to say about their own experiences with their own councils having to pay those charges. But on the whole, I think it's a good report.
Righty-ho. Thank you very much, Councillor Riddell. Councillor Dumper, then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to address one of the item 4, where it says dog waste is mixed with non-recyclable waste when it's taken to the EFW facility in Exeter, as EFW do not accept unmixed dog waste. And I know this sort of thing has probably been going on for years, hasn't it? And in fact, there's quite a number of labels around on ordinary litter bins saying you can deposit your dog waste here, etc. So this, in a small way, has been going on for quite a long time. One question I'd like to ask is, are there any other alternative ways of disposing of dog waste? Because it seems to me that putting it in an incinerator, because that's what it is a very environmentally unfriendly way of doing it. And I would ask that, you investigate ideas around that. The other thing is, in terms of your general approach, which is good, of working with sewers and working with the street waste. We did quite a lot of work in Exmouth a few years ago on trying to reduce plastic, and we tried to get street recycling going more with recycling bins. There are already some in the Strand, but we had some new ones installed with new graphics in the Magnolia Centre, and to some extent that worked, but I would have thought it would be better from a recycling point of view to try and work that in. I don't actually see anything in this report which references that.
Thank you, Councillor Dumper. I do know and have spoken to Street Scene. The recycling bins often get contaminated, majorly contaminated, and I believe it's not a very practical way of doing it. I will hand over to Andrew to expand on that one.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the first question first around the dog waste. So it used to go to landfill in North Devon, and going to EFW is a more environmentally friendly way of dealing with it than that. So that's the preference. There isn't really currently an alternative. An alternative is high temperature anaerobic digestion, but we don't have access to that facility for our dog waste here. So best option we have currently is to commingle it with other waste and send it to EFW. In terms of recycling, you're quite right, we don't mention that here. Sorry to keep harping on about phase 2, but it's something we need to pick up in the wider review of how we operate, simply because at the moment our vehicles don't have segregation for large amounts of dry recycling. As Councillor Hall's mentioned, it gets contaminated at the moment. We need hand in glove education and a different way of dealing with it, and I think that will probably come out of changed vehicles and operation with new contracts, new ways of working. But we also need to remember that the government is due to give us some guidance around the Environment Act and the Deposit Return Scheme and Extended Producer Responsibility soon, and that deposit return scheme will change the landscape of what materials there are in the material stream, and so it wouldn't be sensible to invest heavily in our bins and logistics now if that's going to change what's in that mix.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Brown. Jenny.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. Good report. Yes. Can you firstly let me know when is it the QR codes are going onto the bins? I might have missed that. Have you got a timeline apart from next year?
I don't have a firm date. We're talking to Strata, our IT providers, at the moment about the back office bits of it, and it's being developed right now, so it will be imminent.
Yeah, love it. Brilliant idea. The other one is with the bin products in Honiton. We've had a few of our bins being set fire to and vandalised. Do you have this often? And is there a replacement bins that we can have that are fireproof?
Yes and no. There are, of course, metal bins that can be provided, but they come at a much heftier cost, which is why we go for the recycled plastic ones. There are also fire suppression additions that you can get for bins that have it regularly. It's quite a sporadic thing, and if it were to happen with sort of a pattern, then we probably would look at the fire suppression. The place it happens most often is on the seafronts with barbecues, and we do try and provide the barbecue bins, but it doesn't always work.
Thank you, Andrew. I think, have we got any other members wanting to speak? I think we can look at the recommendations, or the couple things that we can look at are whether we actually look at the uplift in charges for both the waste litter and the dog bin waste to make it more viable for and not a total loss for EDDC, and also whether the charges are going up over a 1 year period or straight off, or over a 2 year period split. So have we got any thoughts on that, please? Councillor Bailey?
Thank you, Chair. I've read this report. Very interesting, very good. But I agree, I think, with a speaker somewhere over there just now who said, why are we waiting? Councillor, the guy in the team, I forget your name, so the man there smiling.
Blakey.
Who may have indigestion, I'm not sure, but
Blakey.
His idea, yes, was good. But why are we waiting? Why are we running at a loss? Let's put it up in one go, and let's, we don't have to make a profit. We've got to cover it cover our expenses. And some of these expenses we're looking, if some of the proposals are £750,000 to change a few bins, which is a ridiculous amount of money. It really is. And we shouldn't, not everyone in East Devon has a dog. So, you know, it's being subsidised by everybody else. So let's at least wash its face. And I think we should put it up as soon as possible. Even if we adopt the massive amount of changing the bins, which is going to cost an absolute fortune, I think we have to stay where we are for a moment. And over a period of time, we can build up a fighting fund, so when that time happens, it's not going to knock 7 bells out of the taxpayer, is it? When they get a massive bill like that. You know, so that's what I would propose, Chair.
So you...
Sorry, Chair, just to say, so for tonight, it's about making suggestions which Andrew can take away to take into the policy, which will then go back to Cabinet. So you're not approving the recommendations to Cabinet, and for you to suggest suggestions like that, which will then be taken into the report, will be considered to be taken into the report.
Right.
So your recommendation, you're looking at the recommendation of doing it, the charges for dog waste and litter bin waste going up.
The whole works, yeah.
The whole works. Oh, in one hit.
Yes.
So do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Levine, second. Thank you. And say, can I go to the vote, please? All in favour? Okay.
Usually is the two of us, isn't it? Yeah.
So, we need, from others, I would say, if you're not agreeing to that, is there a recommendation?
Sorry, point of order, Chair. Votes against and abstentions.
Sorry.
I don't think we...
Yes. Votes against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And abstentions?
Yeah. 3.
Thank you. So have we got any recommendations we want to put? Councillor Riddell?
This is on whether it's in one go or... yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that I would recommend that we do it over the period that was suggested in the report. I think that if it's going to go up at all, at least then it gives the parish councils and the town councils time to plan and work it into their budgets, and you know, they know where they are going forward. I think to do it in one hit would be a bit unfair, so I'd recommend that we do it as it's over 2 years, I think.
Over 2 years, yeah. And to do the dog waste and the litter bins at the same time?
Yeah.
Yes. So do we have a seconder on that? Councillor Dumper? So going to the vote, all in favour of that recommendation? All against? 1. Abstentions? 2. Thank you for that in-depth discussion about dog bins and waste. Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee held on the 9th of June 2022, pages 17 to 21. The item is for the committee to look into making further progress on the following subject of to consider a petition platform within the council's website, to publicise the council's petition scheme via the council's weekly press release. This follows a recommendation from Cabinet that the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee held on that date be referred to Overview Committee. Members should refer to minute 7 of the scrutiny minutes. Do we have anyone from outside the committee wanting to make a comment on this one, please? Councillor Goodman?
Thank you, Chair. Well, when I was a resident, I put this to scrutiny, which is now some 16 months ago, and it was forgotten, basically. It didn't go through. And it came about because of a petition on the car park charges that the Chamber and I conducted. And it would seem a logical approach for this council to adopt a web-based policy of having a petition on the web. Many other councils do it, and it was a suggestion that I put to scrutiny, which they then put to Cabinet, and I would support certainly doing the work to see how it could work for this council, because it's about listening to our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. Councillor Arnott?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So if you look at page 17, I think, of your agenda, as then merely Mr. Mike Goodman, Councillor Mike Goodman in Surrey, as he was also at the time, made a statement that just wasn't true. And I wouldn't want any of this to follow on from that. So there were questions about how the petitions that he produced had been executed, but the decisions about therefore not moving ahead with those petitions for consideration, that was done under the strong advice of the monitoring officer. It was not a cabinet member decision ever, but that's what's been asserted here. The monitoring officer, I think, then corrects that to an extent, and he says this decision did not constitute a breach of the rules because Mr. Goodman, Councillor Goodman, had said it was undemocratic and unconstitutional. So at the time, the car parking petitions did not meet the requirements to go ahead and trigger a process. So I think that's, going back to that period of time, is completely irrelevant. The question, therefore, now is whether Overview think that it's worth this council setting up a means to do regular online petitions. And I'm very interested to hear what people say about that, both the benefits, the risks and the costs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Anyone wanting to speak from outside anymore? No? I think coming into committee, do we have Councillor Todd Olive? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I can be slightly more opinionated with this point, so I'm going to seize the opportunity and be so. I wanted to make the observation, and appreciating Councillor Arnott's comments about where this maybe came from. I think it's quite right that we in the 21st century look at how we use digital resources like e-petitions to improve democratic participation in local government. I would make the observation that it strikes me that this is not a novel idea and is in no way reinventing the wheel. Not knowing anything about the topic in particular, somebody must have done this already. It does not strike me that we would be unique at all if we were to choose to do so. So I wonder, coming straight out the bat with a suggestion of some kind, if it might be that the first thing that we propose is for some officer time to be spent on researching what other councils have actually done. That's my contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Olive. And say benchmarking against other councils would be appropriate, I think. Councillor Fernley?
Yes, on a similar line. How much does something like this cost the council when we've already got, such problems? Is it deemed to be a good way to move forward for communication? Communication is always good, but at what cost? But again, the benchmarking would help us to find that out.
Yeah, I think so. It's officers' time as well, which we've got to be mindful of. Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Henry. I fully support this suggestion. I think that there's a lot of groups out there that use this already, pressure groups. I don't know how many other councils use it. I think that it gives everybody a voice. Some people come and talk to us as councillors to say, to voice something they're passionate about. A lot of people, and I'd say probably most people don't. and this basically gives everybody a voice. So I would very much support this.
Thank you. And say we do need to be mindful of those people who don't use a computer or computer literate. So there would always have to be two systems, really. And I do know I have taken part in a car parking survey, and you can easily fool this system and put that you live there, and it doesn't take or stop you for entering those details. You can actually own a business there, and still it lets you enter all your information and do your answers accordingly. So it's a system which has to be foolproof, which and say we're looking at other councils, how they do it would be probably the best way of doing it. Councillor Young.
Yeah, I'd just like to make the point that if the council ask for a survey, it's going to be, we're going to be accused of giving leading questions, and of course they're going to ask these questions, but they're going to totally ignore the answers. And if a battle group decides to do a survey, then it's going to be leading questions, and obviously it's going to be battering the district council. So now, what's going to be the result of a petition or a survey? Now, yes, we might get a feeling of, yeah, it's a good idea, it might be a bad idea, but no one's going to vote for price increases. Everyone will vote for decreases. So it's a tricky one, isn't it?
Mm. Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Olive?
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come back in. Just very quickly, doing a quick Google. Exeter already have an e-petition system, and I believe Councillor Dumper has assured me it is the case, that Strata serves us and Exeter, and that sort of says to me there must be a system that Strata already have for handling this, and that perhaps this could be implemented relatively straightforwardly in the grand scheme of things. I don't know, but perhaps there's a straightforward investigation there to be done.
So I think we've had a discussion on this. We've had a proposal from Councillor Olive. Marianne, did you want to?
Well, there's talk here about petitions and possibly surveys and things. Who is going to be the advocate to ensure that the questions being posed are unbiased? That, to me, is the salient question before you even start with this.
Thank you. Councillor Olive?
I mean, I take the point if we're talking about community consultations, but if what we're talking about here is just an offering of an online platform for residents to submit and sign up to petitions for which residents determine what is being asked for, I understand if we were talking about consultations and surveys of residents and whatnot, I see where that point comes from. But if all we're doing here is implementing a digital system for something that residents can do on paper anyway, it doesn't seem to me that any of those sorts of questions are in any way really novel for a digital system as opposed to a paper one.
So we're looking at a platform for residents to do. So we've got a proposal from Councillor Olive, seconder from Councillor Fernley. All in favour? I think that's all of us. Thank you. Thank you for that one. Right. Moving on to item number 10 on our agenda, the work programme 2023-2024, pages 22 to 28. We're to note that our scoping template, I've handed out a couple paper ones, but it can be filled in online on a Word document. If you need help there, shout to Sarah James here, who will hopefully be able to talk you through on that one. And the grass cutting, to be confirmed, the proposed date, it's running behind schedule, but I think that there is a valid reason there. I think we're waiting for a report. Councillor Young?
Yeah, we're waiting for new staff to come in who then can write the report. And regarding the beach amenity management plan, what's that about?
It's coming to us in January. It's, is it, who's doing that one?
Which beach?
I think, over to you, Sarah, on that one.
I can't answer which beach it is, but it is a report, so it's on the Cabinet forward plan currently, so it will come to this committee first before it goes to Cabinet. I don't have any further information about it, I'm afraid.
Chair, for me, I think it might be a Pete Blythe report. Yes. That's probably not just one beach. I think it's all sorts of things beach related. It'll be great.
Any other? I'd say we've got here also a proposal form submitted by Councillor Goodman, proposing overview receives an update on the implementation of the new public toilet strategy and to review the direction of travel. And you can see the officer's comment is included on the proposal form. But I do believe there is actually a document being worked on by Tim Child, which will be coming through, and until that point, I would suggest we actually keep it on the scope to actually be on our work programme, but until we've got the report, up-to-date report and review, we don't know quite which direction we want to scrutinise. Does that sound okay to folk? Yeah. Because at the moment, we are waiting for this report update on where we are at, which is going to be quite in detail, and then we can actually scrutinise where we're at. Because at the moment, all we've got is what was deemed going to happen in 2021. But I recommend it to be on our work programme to come back. Councillor Brown?
Where can I see that report? The old one that they're sort of updating or working on?
I think it was in the 20... Sorry? It was Cabinet 2021? Decided in 2021 to develop new toilet strategy. It was an overview meeting on the 25th of November.
It was certainly, there was a report that went to Cabinet. I don't think it went to Council. I think it was just a Cabinet report in 20. So it'll be on the website.
Yeah. I think, unless there's any other comments, Councillor Dumper?
Yeah, just one thing. I unfortunately wasn't able to be at the last overview, and I just wanted to assure myself that the grass cutting in urban areas report, which is to come forward, will include the idea of liaising closely with county and with local towns and parishes, because those authorities do quite a lot in this area, and it's getting everybody's act together, really.
Yes, thank you. And if it has, when we see the report, we can then scrutinise it further. Yeah, thank you very much. I think that brings our meeting to an end. A well worthwhile meeting. Lots of good discussion there, and I'd like to thank everyone for taking part. Thank you.